In this video, I'm going to be showing off a Sony Vaio NV170. I'll be showing off the unique modules used in its interchangeable bay, replacing the easily accessible spinning hard drive with an SSD, doing a more involved teardown to remove the CMOS battery, showing off the Windows XP factory install, and then giving a demo of the subwoofer and Minidisc modules. But first, some history and specs. This desktop replacement style multimedia targeted notebook was released in 2002. It weighed in at 6.5 pounds at just over 1.5 inches thick. You had the NV series with Pentium 4M processors from 1.6 to 1.8 gigahertz. Also the NVR series with AMD Athlon XP mobile processors. They came with either 14 or 15-inch screens with a resolution of up to 1600 by 1200. You had 2 DDR slots with 256 megabytes standard, upgradable up to 512 megabytes. For the video card, on the Intel side, you got an ATI Mobility Radeon 7500. On the AMD side, you got a GeForce 4 420 Go. It came with a built-in CD recorder, DVD-ROM, a 20 or 30 gigabyte 2.5-inch ID hard drive. A unique feature to only this model is its modular bay system. You could use a standard floppy drive, but also a 10-key numeric keypad, a subwoofer, or a mini disc player. The NVs came with Windows XP installed. So now let's take a look around the laptop. Up front, we have our Sony memory card reader, status LEDs. Along the side, under this door, we have our composite video AV out, Ethernet, modem, and iLink Firewire port. 2 PC card slots, microphone and headphone jacks, a physical analog volume dial. Along the back, we have our CPU exhaust, 19.5 volt DC in, 3 USB ports, and under this cover, serial, printer, and VGA out. Along the opposite side, we have our battery compartment, DVD-ROM CD burner, and the highlight of the NV series, the modular bay. We release the latch, remove the floppy drive. Here's the subwoofer module. I'll be showing all the different modules shortly here. You can see this one sticks down a bit lower, so we need to extend the feet in the back. So, opening up the lid, we have our jog dial, which controls specific actions in different apps, or scroll wheel, back button, power button. Now it also picked up a Vaio NVR, which is basically the AMD version of the NV. I'll talk more about it in a bit, but it did come with some of the original paperwork, and here are the original recovery CDs. Warning slip that the CPU exhaust could burn you. Not sure how true that is. Some general safety information. Our warranty statement. A quick start guide for Windows XP. Quick start guide for the computer itself. And then this is pretty cool, a catalog for a couple of Vaio lines. Here's our Vaio NV. You can see some external speakers and a mouse. Looks like an additional battery was another $250. The VX series. FXA series. I have an FX. I think this is the AMD version. Bunch of cables. Interesting mouse there with a built-in memory stick card reader. Some displays here. 18-inch LCD starting at $1,000. 21-inch Trinitron CRT for $800. Some third-party stuff here. Let's take a look at all the different modules you can get. Most of these were included. First, we have the floppy drive. Connects internally through USB. Next, we have a numeric keypad. Spring-loaded, pops out, locks into place with a num-lock LED and a little foot on the bottom. We have the weight saver unit, basically an empty plastic tray, save a little weight. I guess you could maybe store something in here. We have the compact woofer unit, a pretty decent sounding subwoofer. I'll give a demo of this at the end. Here's a quick comparison height-wise to the floppy unit, which normally sits flush. So we need to stick the feet down to use these taller units. Now I have another subwoofer that's a bit more beat up, so I thought we'd take a look inside. Hidden screw under the label along the edges. It's pretty well made. So we have a screen over the tube to make sure nothing gets inside. 1.5-inch speaker. You can see they used a lot of foam around the screw holes and on the wires. There were 3 screws holding the circuit board in. I've already removed it. Taking a look at the other side. You can see this does have a powered amplifier with an LM4863 2.2 watt mono amp. So let's take a look at the mini disc player. That's what makes this laptop pretty unique. It was sold separately. Isn't too easy to find these days. Activity light on the front and a soft eject button. You also have a physical eject button on the top. When I got my unit, I wasn't able to read any discs. The light would just come on and it would spin and spin. So while I didn't record it, I did take some pictures as I was disassembling this and trying to repair it. It's a pretty standard mini disc mechanism, so I tried doing the standard tricks to repair it. I cleaned the laser with some isopropyl alcohol and then tried to re-lubricate the worm drive through the door. Still had the same issue, so I tried removing the mechanism to get better access. You can see looking up from the bottom, here's that worm drive. So I added some more lubricant and then manually turned the little gears right below it by hand, moving it fully back and forth, adding a little more grease. Then I reassembled the drive, and it was again able to read and write to mini discs. An interesting note on these units, people used to modify them so they could plug them directly to a desktop PC over USB. I found this Japanese website, translated here. You can see the unit that they purchased. Talking about the pinout for a standard USB connector. And it looks like they noticed that the bay connector for the Vaio is similar to the connector used on some Sony audio players, which they had a pinout for. And so they translated that to the little ribbon cable used by the dot connector. You can see they found the USB pins, and interestingly, they found some audio pins. In the Vaio, this drive is a record-only device. You can't play back mini discs. And here's his final result with the USB port added. So let's take a look at the bottom of the laptop, the simple upgrades, starting by removing the battery. Here's a release switch for our modular bay. Notice there's a peg on the top here. It looks like a matching screw hole underneath this plastic cover. Could use this to lock the module in so it can't be easily removed. Here's a better view of those spring-loaded feet. Under the side cover, we have our dial-up modem. The middle compartment gives us access to the memory. Two DDR SODIMM slots. In this compartment, we have the slot for our Wi-Fi card. My model didn't come with one. It also doesn't look like it's been pre-wired with antenna cables, so it's not quite as easy as just adding a card. So now let's upgrade the hard drive. The caddy is just being held in by a screw. I have to shake it out here. And we just slide it out, and it's just a standard 2.5-inch 44-pin IDE hard drive, being held in by a couple of screws. So I'll be replacing this with an M2 SATA SSD in this IDE enclosure. Get the drive screwed together, and then we just screw it into the caddy. Slide the drive back in, reinstall the screw, and then reinstall the battery. So now let's start our teardown to remove the CMOS battery, first by removing the main battery, and then two small screws in the battery bay. If you have an AMD-based NVR laptop, it uses a lithium coin cell battery that won't leak. If you need to replace it, it's just under the keyboard. You don't really need to remove any screws. I'll point that out when we get to that stage. Otherwise, I have a dedicated section for the AMD right after this. Next, removing the module from the bay. 3 long screws on the bottom. Now some of these screws probably didn't need to be removed. They're probably holding in the motherboard and we're not going that far, but it's better to just do them now rather than finding out one's required and having to try to do it when the laptop's half disassembled. Hard drive's held in by a single screw and then a couple screws in its bay. 2 different size screws to the right and left of the Wi-Fi compartment. Up top, 2 long screws in each far corner and the 2 smaller ones in the center. There was a screw here on my AMD model which seems to be missing here. Now we can remove 2 screws from the back that are supporting the screen hinges. Next, remove the hinge covers. We do this by prying on the back and then tilting it forward. There are hooks on the front. Now you'll see in the next step that they're back on again. I did these further in the disassembly, but it's a lot easier if you do it now, so I moved this forward. So now remove the panel above the keyboard. If you have an AMD system, this is where you're going to start the process. We just pry along the front. There are some tabs in the back, then angle it out. Next, remove the keyboard. It's held in by a single screw and then slotted into the bottom. And there's a ribbon cable attached to the motherboard, held in with a latching connector. So with the AMD system, we'd be able to access the coin cell here. Probably won't even need to remove the keyboard. Since we need to go deeper on our Intel system, we need to disconnect the top panel. The ribbon cable is just being held in by friction, no latches. Next, we need to remove this top metal plate. It's being held in by a number of different sized screws. We also have the LCD ground. disconnecting the fan from the motherboard. Moving the DVD drive by pushing it from the back. Removing the video connector. I'm doing this by kind of carefully leveraging the sides off my finger. Now to remove the 4 hinge screws, there's 2 black screws on each side. There's also an additional silver smaller screw on the right. Maybe worth checking on these if your screen is a little wobbly, because I noticed a couple of these had loosened up on mine. And now we can carefully lift the screen away. Under the screen, we have 2 more small screws along the top edge. And finally, 2 small screws underneath the DVD bay. These are different sizes and colors. So we have a ribbon cable along the top that kind of gets in the way. Rather than disconnecting it and possibly risking damaging it, I'm just going to remove this heatsink plate here. Now we can move the top cover, being careful because we have a friction fit ribbon cable running up to the trackpad. So we're finally to our CMOS battery, disconnecting it here. You can see it's in a little compartment. I guess that keeps it away from the motherboard if it leaks. The wire is being fed through a slot. So it doesn't look to me like there's any way to pull this battery through while that top cover is still in place. Check the very end of this section in the final reassembly for some suggestions if you should reinstall a new CMOS battery or not. So it looks like I caught this just in time. There's a little bit of green corrosion on the battery connector itself. The connector on the motherboard itself looked undamaged, but just in case, I gave it a quick clean. So since we're in here, let's repaste the CPU, removing the 4 screws in the order printed under the brackets. So not too dusty, but the thermal paste here doesn't seem to be doing too much anymore. Cleaning off all the paste with some isopropyl alcohol. So before reinstalling the heatsink, let's take a close-up look at the motherboard. Our new thermal paste. Next, reinstalling the heatsink. First I put in all 4 screws, just getting them started. And then I tighten them all down in the order marked on the bracket. Next, reinstalling the top cover, and then we have that fiddly little trackpad ribbon cable. So as often seems to happen to me, the little plastic reinforcing strip has fallen off the cable. Normally I'd use a few layers of Kapton tape to thicken the end back up again. Since this connector is so awkward, it's easier just to put the ribbon cable in as is. It goes in loose now. Then slide it in the strengthener afterwards so it locks the cable firmly into place. Now the reassembly continues with the 4 screws going to the top cover. We reinstall the screen with the 5 hinge screws. Make sure our video cable is properly routed and then reconnect it to the motherboard. Reinstall a little heatsink piece. Those power cables run through this channel. Now we can reinstall the top plate. The screw I'm about to put in behind the DVD drive is a mistake. It needs to go in after the drive, this one here. Reconnect our fan. Here I'm taking that DVD screw back out and then sliding in the drive and reinstalling it. Reinstalling the keyboard, we're going to lift the latch up first. Then it slots into the bottom and is held in with a single screw. Reconnect the ribbon cable into the top panel. This is friction fit. Reinstalling the top panel, starting with the tabs in the back. Reinstalling the hinge covers. When I do this by angling them in, hooking the clips in the front first. So now I just reinstall all the bottom screws. Wanted to mention a quirk I noticed, perhaps this needs more testing. Without the main battery or a CMOS battery, the laptop wouldn't properly power on unless you hit the reset button, which I'll show in a little bit. Then it works fine until you unplug it and then you have to reset it again. With a working main battery, your CMOS settings are preserved even without a CMOS battery, so this isn't an issue. You have easy access on an AMD system, so it's not really a concern. On the Intel systems, if you want to use the proper battery compartment, it's a full teardown again. Could put the CMOS battery in the mid compartment, but then if it ever leaks in the future, it'll be directly damaging the motherboard. Again, it's only really concerned if your main battery doesn't hold charge anymore. But worst case, you can always just hit the reset button each time to bring it back to life. So finally, let me show you that reset button. It's just a little hole in the bottom of the laptop. I just poke it with a jumper lead. You can feel a little tactile switch underneath. But that's our reassembly completed. So while the Intel version of the NV has a nickel metal hydride battery that has or will leak and requires an almost full teardown as you just saw, the AMD based NVR series uses a standard lithium coin battery, which you can see here, which you can access by just popping off the top trim piece and unscrewing the keyboard. My AMD model here had some problems which required a full teardown, removing the motherboard. I didn't record it, but I did document it with some pictures. So as we're looking at these images, let me give you a little bit of the story behind this laptop, how I used it to get my factory image. So I picked up my NV in really nice shape, but there is no factory recovery media available for my model, or really any Intel model. The AMD media has been archived. Sony locks all of its recovery media, preventing you from using discs intended for other models, even when there's just a tiny variation. I came across a listing for this AMD model. It was kind of nice because it came with that paperwork that I showed earlier. It also came with that weight saver module, which I hadn't really seen before. However, both of the screen hinges were broken. It did show it powered up and in the BIOS, but every other column was blank, like jail bars. So considering the damage, I figured that the screen ribbon cable or maybe the screen itself was damaged. You can actually replace those for fairly cheap. You could still read the screen well enough to at least use the factory recovery media, but I figured I'd just hook it up to an external monitor. So I won the auction. It went super cheap. People were scared away by the damage. When I got it, the screen was actually worse. It was a whole bunch of lines and it was pretty much unreadable now. And the bad part, hooking it into an external screen, it had the exact same artifacts. So it looks like it's actually more of a motherboard issue or GPU. So I kept on playing around with it, poking the little reset button hidden on the bottom with a paper clip. After about 10 tries, it suddenly worked with no artifacts. So I powered it down, installed the new hard drive, get ready to install the factory recovery media, and it was back to the same issue again. After a bunch more resets, it did boot again normally. I booted off the recovery media. I did a full recovery, got into Windows, did the application recovery. I switched back to a generic IDE controller. So I imaged and cloned the drive and stuck it into my NV. Windows detected and installed new drivers, like for the chipset, switching from AMD to Intel. Pretty much everything installed perfectly. I had to manually install a modem, The only other thing missing was a video card. The AMD model had an NVIDIA GPU. The Intel version has an ATI Radeon GPU. I managed to track down the official Sony driver. These older mobile video card drivers are a bit of a hassle because you can't just download them directly from NVIDIA or AMD. They had unique hardware IDs, so you had to download them directly from the laptop maker. So in the end, I have a working factory install for my NV. I'll be uploading both the NVR factory clean install, as well as the tweaked version that runs on NV series, to archive.org as a hard drive image, so it can easily be installed onto any NV laptop, bypassing all those Sony recovery media model checks. Since then, it's taken a turn for the worse. Now it powers down immediately. And that's when I fully tore it down. I didn't see anything obvious, but at least for now, it served its main purpose. So now let's take a tour of the factory Windows XP installation. But first, a look at the BIOS. This has got a really nice high resolution screen, 1400 by 1050. It's a bit hard to see here, so I'll lower it. So let's check out the installed apps, starting with everything in the Vaio World folder. Digital Print lets you import in your photos, make some simple edits, organize them into different albums, and then get prints. DV Motion and DV Still are your camera capture apps. Since this app is supported by the jog dial, you can see we get a special menu to access different functions. Fortunately, my jog dial isn't working. Image Station was Sony's online image and video sharing site. It's no longer available, but here's a demo. Movie Shaker is Sony's version of Windows Movie Maker. You can add your different clips to the timeline, different transitions. You can choose between different moods and then shake it to automatically apply different effects to your movie. Inter-video DVD player, Pico player, connects with GigaPocket installed onto a Sony computer, stream TV shows or playback recordings from the DVR. Screen Blast Acid, a sound tool. I've not seen this on a Vaio before. Makes sense with the multimedia angle. It does have a little bit of a demo.
Welcome to Screen Blast Acid. You got the software, you got the ideas, so let's get started. Select a file, drag it into the timeline, and release. Now paint the soundtrack into the timeline. Click play. Now let's add an effect. Press the effects button. Choose an effect. Now let's loop our music mix. To activate the loop bar, click the loop button. The loop bar determines the length of the playback loop. Drag the loop bar button. Now play. Well, we've completed your tutorial, so go on out and create your first masterpiece. Good luck.
Screen Blast SoundForge, a similar sound recorder app.
Welcome to Screen Blast SoundForge. Let's record a new sound. Click on the record button to bring up the recording options. The recording attributes will tell you what format you are recording to. When you are ready to record, click the red record button. To stop recording, click the stop button. To play a sound, click the play button. To add an effect, select the portion of the sound file you would like to apply the effect to. Now, select the effects menu and choose your desired effect. Change the settings for the desired effect, or choose from presets in the menu. Clicking the preview button will allow you to hear the changes before applying them to your file. To create loops to use in Screen Blast Acid, select the Acid loop to save the file to your computer. File. Now let's publish your work to the internet. Congratulations! You have now completed your tutorial.
Let's check out the rest of the start menu. I'm going to save Sonic Stage for the end. PC-Cillin antivirus, Quicken, Vaio support and system information. We have an icon for Sony's EverQuest MMO, but it needs a CD to start. On the desktop, we have Experienced Vaio. This gives a quick summary of all the Sony multimedia apps. We have pictures, movies, music, entertainment, and wireless. And last but not least, let's check out Sonic Stage, Sony's proprietary music player. Usually not well regarded. I have a slightly newer version here. We can try out the subwoofer and the Minidisc player. So first, let's import in a couple of MP3s. Name our playlist. So currently I have the floppy drive installed in the bay. I'm going to start playing a couple tracks, jumping around. Then I'll swap in the subwoofer module, play a couple more tracks, and then slide it in and out so you can hear side-by-side comparisons.
I know you told your friend you're not okay.
Now let's get ready to swap in the subwoofer. I won't fully slide it in to begin with. Put a note on the screen when it's in use.
I'm just
So now let's check out the mini disc player. Now you'd think you'd want the subwoofer when you're playing mini discs, but this is record only. You can't play back on the machine. Though looking at that pinout on the connector, it seems like it might have been possible. Going back into Sonic stage. As you can see in our transfer, we have a new option for NetMD. First, let's take a quick look at some of the different transfer options we have. We have standard transfer, SP transfer, or we can choose which mode we want to use. So let's switch to NetMD and pop in a blank mini disc. You can see it found our disk, and if we check media info, we can see it's a blank 80-minute disk. We also have the option to initialize it. Let's title our mini disk. Select all the tracks in our playlist. We can transfer to the disk. There's also an option to transfer from the disk, although that only works with later formats, and our transfer options. So let's start our transfer. First, it's going to need to convert the tracks, then we'll copy them over. You can see it'll then start working ahead, converting upcoming tracks. After this first track, I'll fast forward to the rest. So it's all finished. We pop out the disk and reinsert it. We can see it read in all of our tracks. We can go use this disk in our portable mini disc players. So finally, let's take a quick look at the computer properties. But that's it. Thanks for watching.